Today we are going to talk about a man who spent his entire life devoted to science and logic, a man who came to disprove the Quran, a man who thought religion was for the weak-minded and science was the only truth. But something happened that changed everything. His name was Dr. Maurice Bucaille, a French physician, a scientist of the highest order, and eventually a Muslim. Maurice Bucaille was born on July 19, 1920, in Pont-l'Évêque, France. He studied medicine at the University of Paris and became one of the most respected gastroenterologists in Europe. His reputation was so extraordinary that he became the personal physician of the French royal family, and later the personal physician of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat's family. He was not just a doctor, he was a man of deep intellectual curiosity, a man who believed that if something could not be proven by science, it simply was not worth believing. He was raised as a Catholic Christian, but religion was never truly at the centre of his life. Science was. Experiments were, facts were. Islam, to him, was something distant, something he associated with the medieval Arab world, something he had never seriously studied or considered. Then came 1974, and everything changed. The Egyptian government invited the world's finest experts to Paris to examine the mummy of Pharaoh Ramesses II. This was one of the most significant archaeological examinations of the 20th century. The mummy had been kept in the Cairo Museum for decades, and scientists wanted to conduct a deeper, more thorough examination using modern technology. Dr. Bucaille was selected as one of the key members of this international scientific team. After long and detailed examinations, a stunning discovery was made. The body of the mummy contained traces of salt. Not just ordinary salt, the kind of salt residue that is left when a body has been submerged in seawater. This was direct scientific evidence that this particular pharaoh had drowned in the sea. When Dr. Bucaille shared this finding with the team, one of his Muslim colleagues turned to him and said something that stopped him cold. He said, "This is already mentioned in the Quran." Bucaille smiled politely and dismissed the comment. He thought it was probably an exaggeration, maybe a coincidence, or perhaps a misinterpretation of an ancient text. How could a religious book written 1400 years ago contain accurate scientific information that modern science had only just discovered? But that night, out of pure curiosity, he picked up a French translation of the Quran and started reading. He found chapter Yunus, verse 92. The meaning of that verse was this: "Today we shall preserve your body, so that you may be a sign for those who come after you." Bucaille sat in silence for a long time. The verse was not just saying that the pharaoh drowned. It was specifically saying that the body would be preserved. It would become a sign for future generations. The Bible also describes the pharaoh drowning, but it says nothing about the preservation of his body. Yet the Quran made a very specific claim, that the body would survive. And there it was, in the Cairo Museum, perfectly preserved, thousands of years later. As a scientist, his mind could not let this go. He kept asking himself the same question: how could a man living in 7th century Arabia, without any access to archaeological tools, without any knowledge of Egyptology, without any modern scientific instruments, make such a precise and specific claim about the preservation of a body that would not even be discovered for more than 1,000 years after his death? This was not a vague spiritual statement. This was a specific factual claim that history had confirmed. He made a decision that night. He would study the Quran scientifically. He would go through it verse by verse, topic by topic, and find the errors. He was completely confident that he would find contradictions, scientific mistakes, outdated claims. Because in his experience, every ancient religious text had them. He learned Arabic from scratch, not to become religious, but to read the Quran in its original language so that no translator could obscure the meaning. What followed was years of the most intense research of his life. He began with cosmology. In chapter Al-Anbiya, verse 30, the Quran says, "Do the disbelievers not see that the heavens and the earth were once joined together, and then we split them apart?" Bucaille compared this with the Big Bang theory, which states that the entire universe began as a single point and then expanded outward in a massive explosion. The Big Bang theory was proposed in 1927 by Georges Lemaitre, more than 1,300 years after the Quran was revealed. Yet the Quran was describing this exact concept, the heavens and earth being one and then being separated, more than a millennium before science caught up. He moved on to the expansion of the universe. In chapter Ad-Dariyat, verse 47, the Quran says, We built the heavens with great power, and we are constantly expanding it. Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is continuously expanding in 1929. This was considered one of the most revolutionary discoveries in the history of astronomy. Yet the Quran had already described this precise phenomenon over 1,000 years earlier, using a word that specifically means ongoing expansion. Then Bucaille turned to embryology. This is where things became deeply personal for him as a medical professional. In chapter Al-Alaq, the Quran describes the creation of the human being from something called alaka. The Arabic word alaka has multiple layers of meaning. It means something that clings or attaches. It also refers to a leech-like structure. It also describes a blood clot. Modern embryology tells us that after fertilization, the embryo attaches itself to the wall of the uterus, and in its early stages looks remarkably like a leech under a microscope. The resemblance is so striking that Professor Keith Moore, one of the world's most respected embryologists and the author of one of the most widely used embryology textbooks in the world, reviewed these Quranic descriptions and publicly stated that the accuracy of this description could not have come from human knowledge available in the 7th century. Bucaille continued his research into oceanography. In chapter An-Nur, verse 40, the Quran describes deep ocean darkness by saying, "Or like the darkness in a deep sea, covered by waves upon waves, above which are clouds." The phrase waves upon waves fascinated Bucaille. Modern oceanography has discovered that deep in the ocean, there exist internal waves that form between layers of water with different densities. These internal waves were only discovered in recent decades using advanced underwater technology. No human being in the 7th century could have dived to those depths. No instruments existed to detect these internal waves. Yet the Quran was describing them with a phrase that perfectly captures their layered, stacked nature. He studied geology next. In chapter An-Naba, verse 7, the Quran describes mountains as pegs. For centuries, people assumed this was simply a metaphor. But modern geology has revealed that mountains have deep roots extending far beneath the surface of the earth. Just like a peg is mostly buried in the ground, with only a small portion visible above, mountains have massive foundations, underground, that can extend several times deeper than the height visible above ground. These roots are what stabilize the Earth's crust. The word peg was not a metaphor, it was a precise geological description. He then examined the barrier between two bodies of water. In chapter Ar-Rahman, verses 19 and 20, the Quran says, "He released the two seas, meeting side by side. Between them is a barrier which they do not cross." Modern oceanography has confirmed that when two different bodies of water meet, such as where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Mediterranean Sea, or where a river meets the ocean, there is an invisible barrier between them. This barrier exists because of differences in temperature, density, and salinity. The waters do not immediately mix. Each body of water maintains its own distinct characteristics. This phenomenon was confirmed through modern scientific instruments and underwater research. No one in the 7th century had the tools to discover this. At the same time that Bucaille was studying the Quran, he was conducting a parallel scientific study of the Bible and the Torah, the Qur'an. He examined these texts with the same rigorous scientific approach. And what he found was deeply significant. The Bible contained multiple statements that directly contradicted modern science. The age of the Earth, according to biblical genealogy, was far younger than what geology and physics have confirmed. The sequence of creation described in Genesis was inconsistent with what modern astronomy and biology have established. There were claims that science had simply disproven. Yet in the Quran, after years of searching, he could not find a single scientific error. Not one. He documented all of this research and published it in 1976 in a book titled The Bible, the Quran, and Science. The book caused an immediate sensation in France and was later translated into dozens of languages around the world. In that book, he wrote, "After studying the Quran, I asked myself whether it was conceivable that any human explanation could account for the degree of scientific accuracy found in this text. As a scientist, my answer was no. After years of research, analysis, and deep personal reflection, Dr. Maurice Bucaille accepted Islam. This was not an emotional decision. This was not pressure from anyone. This was the conclusion of a rigorous scientific mind that had followed the evidence wherever it led. Everything in his social environment, his professional standing, his Western education, his Christian background, all of it pointed away from Islam. But the evidence pointed toward it. And as a scientist, he could not in good conscience ignore the evidence. He said, "I am a physician. My entire life has been built on proof and data. The Quran presented me with something I could not scientifically refute. As an honest scientist, it was impossible for me to deny this truth. What makes Bucaille's journey so remarkable is not just that he converted to Islam. What makes it remarkable is why he converted. He did not convert because someone convinced him. He did not convert because of a spiritual experience. He converted because he followed the scientific method all the way to its logical conclusion and found that the Quran could not have been written by a human being. He found that the information in the Quran was too precise, too accurate, and too advanced for any man living in 7th century Arabia to have known." Dr. Maurice Bucaille passed away on February 17, 1998, but his work continues to reach millions of people across the world. His research has opened doors for countless individuals who, like him, needed intellectual evidence before they could open their hearts. His life teaches us one clear lesson: if you look for the truth with genuine honesty, the truth will find you. He came to disprove the Quran. The Quran proved itself to him instead. A scientific mind, an honest heart, and an open eye. These three things led him to a door that he never expected to find. And behind that door was Islam. May God give all of us the ability to seek truth with open hearts and open minds. And may He guide us all to the straight path. If this video added value to your life and you want to keep learning about the relationship between science and faith, please subscribe to this channel right now and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. Your one subscription helps this important work reach more people who need to hear it. Thank you so much for watching.